The boy stood in the middle of the marble-floored living room, fists clenched, eyes burning with a kind of anger no child should carry. Across from him, his little sister screamed that she hated everyone. A crystal vase shattered against the wall, and the wealthy man who owned that mansion just stood there helpless. Before we go any further, if stories like this move you, if real voices and real struggles matter to you, take a moment to subscribe to the Black Voices. Like this video and share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters here. It always has. People in town used to say that money could fix anything. They would point to the tall iron gates at the edge of Willow Creek Drive and say, "See that house? That's proof." The mansion sat on a hill, all glass and stone, with a long curved driveway and perfectly trimmed hedges. It belonged to Marcus Ellington, a self-made tech entrepreneur who had built an app that changed the way small businesses manage their money. By 42, he had more wealth than he ever imagined as a kid, growing up in a small two-bedroom apartment in Atlanta. But inside that mansion, behind the quiet hum of expensive air conditioning and the soft glow of designer lamps, nothing felt stable, especially not his home. Marcus had two children, 12-year-old Isaiah and 8-year-old Layla. From the outside, they looked like the luckiest kids in the county. They wore brand-name clothes. They had the newest gadgets. Their birthdays were events people talked about for weeks. But the one thing they didn't have anymore was their mother. 3 years earlier, their mother had passed away after a sudden illness. It happened fast, too fast. One month she was driving them to school, braiding Layla's hair at the kitchen table, reminding Isaiah to finish his science project. The next month, the house was filled with casseroles from neighbors and quiet whispers from relatives who didn't know what to say. Marcus had buried his grief under work. He told himself he was providing. He told himself he was staying strong. He told himself that building something bigger would somehow protect his children from pain. But grief doesn't disappear just because you can afford to ignore it. After their mother died, Isaiah became silent at first, then angry. Teachers started calling about outbursts in class. He would shove desks. He refused to do assignments. When other kids asked about his mom, he'd either walk away or explode. Layla, on the other hand, cried at night. She would crawl into her father's bed and ask if he thought mommy could see her from heaven. When Marcus said yes, she'd whisper that she hoped mommy wasn't disappointed in her. Marcus tried everything money could buy. Private tutors, a child psychologist with a waiting list 6 months long, a live-in nanny who lasted 2 weeks before quitting in tears, saying she had never seen children so resistant to love. Another nanny accused Isaiah of being impossible. A third simply stopped showing up. Word spread quietly among childcare agencies. The Ellington kids were too much. Marcus began to dread coming home. He would sit in his car in the driveway, staring at the front door, gathering strength. Inside, he could hear shouting through the walls. Isaiah and Layla fought constantly, over toys, over TV, over nothing at all. It wasn't really about those things. It was about the empty chair at the dinner table that no one talked about. One afternoon, Marcus received another call from the school. Isaiah had gotten into a physical fight. When Marcus arrived, he saw his son sitting in the principal's office, jaw tight, eyes distant. The principal explained that another student had joked about Isaiah's mother. Marcus felt heat rise in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. On the drive home, the silence between them felt heavy. Finally, Marcus asked why he didn't just walk away. Isaiah stared out the window and said, in a voice too steady for a 12-year-old, "Because nobody walks away when it's about her." That night, after the children went to bed, Marcus sat alone in the kitchen. He looked at the framed family photo on the counter. In it, his wife's smile was wide and bright, her arms wrapped around both kids. He realized something painful. He had been trying to manage his children, like business problems. Solve, fix, delegate, replace. But grief wasn't a broken device, and children weren't employees. A week later, through a community referral, he heard about a woman named Mrs. Evelyn Carter. She wasn't part of any agency. She was in her early 60s, a retired elementary school teacher who had spent 35 years working in public schools across the city. After retirement, she volunteered at a local church and occasionally helped families who needed support. Someone described her as steady. Another person said, "She sees what other people miss." Marcus hesitated. He had already tried professionals with degrees framed on office walls. What could a retired teacher do that they couldn't? Still, he made the call. When Mrs. Carter first walked through the front door of the mansion, she didn't look impressed. She wore a simple cardigan, comfortable shoes, and carried a canvas tote bag. She greeted Marcus with a firm handshake and warm eyes. There was no nervousness in her posture, no awe at the size of the house. The children were watching from the top of the staircase. Isaiah leaned against the railing, arms crossed. Layla hid partially behind him. Mrs. Carter looked up and smiled gently. She didn't wave. She didn't try too hard. She simply said hello and asked if she could sit with them for a few minutes. Isaiah shrugged. Layla disappeared into her room. Marcus expected chaos within minutes. He stayed nearby, pretending to check emails on his phone. Instead of laying down rules or asking about homework, Mrs. Carter asked Isaiah what music he liked. He mumbled something about hip-hop. She nodded and said her grandson loved the same genre. Then she asked if he would recommend a song to her. It was such a small thing, but it shifted something. Isaiah blinked, surprised. No one had asked his opinion in a while, not without an agenda. Over the next few days, Mrs. Carter didn't try to control the house. She observed. She noticed how Layla flinched at sudden loud sounds. She noticed how Isaiah's anger always spiked around dinner time. She noticed that Marcus rarely sat down to eat with them, often taking calls mid-meal. One evening, after Marcus stepped outside to answer yet another business call, Isaiah pushed his plate away and muttered that dinner was stupid. Instead of correcting him sharply, Mrs. Carter quietly asked what dinners used to be like. He froze. She didn't rush him. She just waited. Finally, he said that their mom used to light a candle every night. Even on random Tuesdays, she would ask everyone to share one good thing about their day. Layla would usually say something silly. Their dad would joke about work, and their mom would laugh in a way that filled the room. Mrs. Carter asked if they still had candles in the house. That night, she found one in a kitchen drawer. She lit it and placed it in the center of the table. She didn't say it was to replace anyone. She didn't say it would fix anything. She simply said that maybe they could try sharing one good thing, just to see how it felt. Layla whispered that she liked her art class. Isaiah said nothing at first, then quietly admitted he scored well on a math quiz. When Marcus came back inside and saw the candle flickering between them, something tightened in his chest. For the first time in a long while, dinner didn't end in shouting. Change didn't happen overnight. Isaiah still had outbursts. Layla still cried at bedtime. But Mrs. Carter stayed calm. When Isaiah slammed doors, she didn't threaten to quit. She told him she understood that anger was sometimes easier than sadness. When Layla asked if her mom would come back as an angel, Mrs. Carter didn't dismiss the question. She said love doesn't disappear just because we can't see it. Marcus began to notice something else. Mrs. Carter wasn't just helping the children. She was gently challenging him, too. One afternoon, she asked if he ever talked about his wife with the kids. He admitted that he avoided it. He thought it would reopen wounds. Mrs. Carter looked at him kindly and said that silence can sometimes hurt, more than memories. That night, Marcus knocked on Isaiah's bedroom door. He sat on the edge of the bed and told his son a story about the first time. He met their mother at a college debate competition. Isaiah listened, surprised. Layla joined them halfway through. They laughed at small details. They cried a little, too. The mansion slowly began to feel less like a showroom and more like a home. Weeks turned into months. Teachers reported improvement. Isaiah still defended his mother fiercely, but he started using words instead of fists. Layla began sleeping through the night. She drew pictures of her family again, including her mom in the clouds, smiling. One evening, as Marcus stood in the doorway watching his children help Mrs. Carter bake cookies, he realized something humbling. All the money he had earned couldn't buy what this woman had given them. She had given them presence, patience, permission to grieve out loud. He asked her once why she agreed to take on such a difficult situation. She said that children aren't difficult. Pain is, and when pain is ignored, it gets loud. The real turning point came months later at a school assembly. Isaiah had been chosen to speak about resilience. Marcus sat in the auditorium, unsure of what his son would say. When Isaiah stepped up to the microphone, his hands trembled slightly. He talked about losing his mom. He talked about being angry at the world. He admitted he pushed people away because he thought nobody understood. Then he said that sometimes what you need isn't someone to fix you. You just need someone to sit with you long enough for the storm to pass. Marcus felt tears slide down his face. After the assembly, Isaiah hugged him tightly. Not the quick, awkward hugs of recent years. A real one. The house on Willow Creek Drive still stood tall and beautiful. But the real wealth inside it wasn't in the art on the walls or the cars in the garage. It was in the quiet conversations at dinner, the shared memories, the laughter that slowly returned. And it all began the day someone walked in without trying to control the noise, but instead chose to understand it. Kindness doesn't always arrive with grand gestures. Sometimes it shows up in a cardigan and comfortable shoes. Sometimes it listens more than it speaks. And sometimes it reminds us that healing isn't about replacing what was lost, but honoring it together. If this story touched you, share your thoughts below. Tell us about someone who showed up for you when you were hurting. On the Black Voices, we believe every story of resilience matters. Because in the end, no amount of wealth can replace human connection. And no child is beyond reach when someone is willing to truly see them.